Now, first thing I'm going to do is start with soldering up the clunk line. I found that the easiest thing to do is to get yourself a piece of wood and drill a hole in the center of it, about 3/16 or a little bit larger, just enough that it'll hold the fuel barb in there without moving around. It'll hold it for you. What I like to do is I'll take the tubing itself and clean the ends up with a little bit of steel wool so that the solder has a chance to stick to it. And it's a rosin core solder of electronics type that you'll find any Radio Shack, or most of you guys are going to have it already. Is the best way to go. I like to use just a tiny little bit of liquid solder, or liquid rosin, and I put just a little bit of that on the tubing and work it into the barb just like that. And I use a good hot 40-watt Radio Shack basic soldering iron, and all you need to do is just put a little heat to it and just touch it with a little bit of solder to get the heat to flow. But all it takes is just like doing sweat solder on plumbing. Just add the one drop, let the solder wick down in there. I turn the tubing a little bit, and voila, it's done. Basically what I'm going to do is mark the fuel line, or the clunk, put that together, set it up at 7 inches overall length. Put a little mark right here at the base of the clunk line. So I'll give me a mark to go by. Then what I do is I'll take a toothpick and I'll shove the toothpick in the hole of the tubing. Put this on here. Tubing right there with the mark showing, and I need to cut off the toothpick. So basically it picks up all the lesser amount of fuel brass that doesn't show up at the end of the clunk, because the brass line is slightly different from tank kit to tank kit, so there's really no overall dimension of that I can give you. So the best way to do it is just like that. So now my line that I drew on there is just showing. That tells me that everything is overall length is just fine. So now I can solder this particular joint just like I did with the other one. I'll add just a little bit of flux. Swivel it around so it takes hold. And this will take a little bit of patience, and because this is a lot of metal there, it's going to take a little while for it to heat up. So again, you just put your heat to it, add a little bit of solder to the tip so that it transfers the heat to the brass, and just sit here and wait for it to get hot. For those of you that can't wait long enough, you can also use a 100-watt solder iron and add more heat to it, and that'll really get it going. That'll just kind of turbocharge your heating. You'll probably find that this is going to burn your wood a little bit too as it gets hot. I can just start to see the solder starting to break down, so it's getting almost there. So I'm going to take this off. Continue to add a little more solder. Add a little more solder. What I'm going to look for is a nice fillet that crawls up the wall of the solder or the brass tubing, and kind of roll it around, make sure that it's all nice and flowed. That's all there is to it. Just let it sit there and cool. Okay, while that's cooling, we'll work on the bottle here, and we'll put the vent line in. I like a 2-line vent system. I like 2 because it eliminates a second hole that I have to cut in the tank and more stuff hanging down in there that can interfere with the clunk movement. And I put my fuel line T in the line between the cap and the carburetor. That's just the way I prefer it, and that's the way I'm going to show you how to do it. And if you want to use a 3-line, you can just do the same thing here that I'm doing with the 2-line, just do it a 3rd time. So basically, I like putting my vent line about right in here on this on the neck, so when the bottle sits like this inside the plane with the tail down, usually it's a tail dragger, that way your air bubble is pretty much up in this area. So what I'll do is I'm going to mark this tank approximately where I want my vent to be. I'll draw a circle. That's on the inside diameter of the nylon washer for good reference. On the forums, some of the guys have been showing different ways of cutting this hole. Some use a brad tip drill point. Makes a nice little clean cut, but I found it also leaves a little bit of burrs. So basically what I do is I use 2 different methods combined. What I will do is we'll position it about where I want it, make sure it's centered, and I'll go ahead and by hand start this so that it punctures the center, and it will start to score the plastic, so it gives me something for my next method to catch without skipping. So now I've got a little bit of an indentation right around there for that brad to work. And what I will use in my electric drill is a piece of 1/4-inch brass tubing that's been sharpened on the inside to make a nice, almost like a knife, so I can use it to drill. See if this works for me. Now that I've got a score mic as a witness, I can set that on there and start real slow. And that's all there is to it. Now, all I have left is my little flap of plastic. I can reach up in there and grab it. There's just a tiny little bit of flashing. Just work that out of there and it's done. Nice and clean. Beautiful hole. So then what I will do is use a set of forceps up through the hole. Oops. Put your plastic washer on there. Finger up in there to hold it. I also like to, since this is demonstration purpose, I'm not going to do it here, but I also like to put just a drop of blue Loctite on the threads for the nut to be secure. Take her down finger tight. You'll find that this end of the fitting is swagged for an Allen wrench. You can put an Allen wrench in there to hold the ferrule, and use your 7/16, I believe, wrench to tighten that up. And we'll take that, it's at finger tight, just as tight as you can get with your fingers. Take it about a quarter to half turn, and that's all you need. That O-ring, Viton O-ring, is works perfectly for it to seal up. And that's basically it for the vent. Now that my clunk line is nice and cool, we're ready to go. I got an overall length of 7 inches. I've got a piece of, get a hold of that piece of toothpick, pull it out. Don't forget that, you'll not have any fuel flow. So basically you've got the fuel clunk ready to go. We need to, if you're good about it and cleaned everything all up ahead of time, you should only have a little bit of flux to clean off with steel wool, full rod. And it's ready to go. The 2 pieces of Viton tubing, you got a 2-inch piece and a 1-inch piece. We can go ahead and put the 1-inch piece on the end of the fuel pickup, all the way up to the end, and that's all you need to do to start with. Here's your cap, a 2-inch piece. Go ahead and install that on the inside of the nipple, all the way down as far as you can get it. Take one of the 2 tie wraps that is with the kit. Go ahead and start it. Bring it down to just about the point where it goes not too tight, but you can still slide it down over the fitting where the tubing is at. Cut off all but about the 1/4 inch of the tail, so that you got something to grab a hold of, because you're going to need to tighten this up yet. Slide it down about halfway down the barb. Take a pair of needle nose pliers, grab a hold of that tail and start twisting to tighten it up. And all you need to do is take it down to the point to where it starts to deform the Viton tubing, and that way you know it's tight. It's a tight fit to begin with, and it doesn't take much. Once you get that tightened down, get in there and clip that tail off, and that one's done. The second one, work your tubing onto the fitting until it's just past flush. Go ahead and halfway install your tie wrap. Now we're going to check the overall length with the length of the bottle. With the O-ring installed in the cap, just throw her in there. Take her down to where she just stops. Check to make sure that the clunk does not hit the bottom of the bottle. I've got about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch clearance between the end of the Viton tubing and a little bump in the bottom of the bottle, so you know it's not going to have a problem. And as you can see, it will go all the way around. There's no metal contact with the tank. It's just Viton tubing right in on the plastic, so there's not to worry about wearing out for these 3D guys. So we know our overall length is where we want it. Let's go ahead and put our tie wrap on completely. Again, just grab a hold of the tail and rotate it to pull it tight, clip it off, and you're done. Alright, so here's your last trick. When you're doing your final installation and you're happy with the way everything looks, take the cap to the point to where it just stops under light finger pressure. Take yourself your Sharpie and draw a line on the cap and on the bottle as a witness mark. So you can line it up just like that. Take a little, about 45 degrees of turn is all you need. See where the original mark is back here, and it turned about 45, about half of a quarter turn is about all you need. It feels just snug. It doesn't have to be real tight. That O-ring does an awesome job of making sure that everything is leak-free. No sealer is needed whatsoever. What I like to do then is make another mark on the cap where the original mark on the bottle is at, as a witness mark, so that as you fly through the season, you keep an eye on it. That way you can tell that it hasn't moved when you're flying. And that basically is all it takes to build a water bottle fuel tank with PSP parts. Happy flying!